Don't watch this. Imagine hearing those words from the one person who never expected to lose their influence. Strange, isn't it? Because when someone desperately hopes you'll never discover the truth, it's usually because the truth changes everything. Today isn't about revenge. It isn't about proving anyone wrong. It's about uncovering the hidden shift that has been happening behind the scenes while you believed nothing was changing. Somewhere, someone connected to your soulmate's past has begun realizing that the story they once controlled is slipping away. They thought time would erase your presence. They believed distance would make your memory disappear. Instead, something completely unexpected happened. Your name became stronger in silence than it ever was in conversation. Don't skip, because what unfolds next explains why certain emotions are suddenly resurfacing after so much time. This isn't coincidence. It's the result of truths that refuse to stay buried. While you've been focused on rebuilding your own peace, someone else has quietly been watching familiar patterns disappear. The old influence no longer carries the same weight. The old conversations no longer create the same effect. And the person who once believed they understood everything is beginning to question whether they misunderstood the most important connection of all. Here's the surprising part. They never expected your soulmate to start remembering the smallest moments. Not the dramatic ones. The quiet ones. A smile that appeared at exactly the right time. A conversation that brought unexpected comfort. A promise that wasn't fully appreciated until much later. Those memories have returned without warning, and each one is changing the way your soulmate sees the past. What looked like ordinary moments before now feel incredibly meaningful. That realization has created a ripple effect no one saw coming. Because once the heart starts remembering truth instead of confusion, everything built on misunderstanding begins to crumble. And that's exactly where this story begins. The person from your soulmate's past has sensed this emotional shift long before anyone said it out loud. They noticed conversations becoming shorter. Reactions becoming calmer. The usual emotional responses simply weren't there anymore. At first, they assumed it was temporary. They believed they could bring everything back to the way it used to be. But every attempt led to the opposite result. The harder they tried to hold on to old narratives, the more your soulmate began questioning them. Think about how powerful that is. Sometimes a heart doesn't awaken because someone speaks louder. It awakens because silence finally creates enough space for honesty to be heard. Your soulmate has reached a place where certain memories no longer feel painful, they feel valuable. That difference changes everything. Suddenly they aren't asking, "Why did this happen?" They're asking, "What did I fail to see?" Those two questions lead to completely different futures. The first keeps someone trapped in the past. The second opens the door to healing. Meanwhile, the person who hoped your chapter had ended has begun realizing something they never prepared for. Your influence was never based on constant presence. It was built on authenticity. And authenticity doesn't disappear simply because time passes. It waits quietly until the right moment reveals its true worth. That's why familiar emotions have started returning without force. Unexpected dreams. Random memories. A sudden feeling of peace whenever your name crosses their mind. None of these things can be manufactured. They happen naturally when the heart begins sorting truth from illusion. Yet there's one conversation that hasn't happened yet, a conversation so unexpected that even your soulmate doesn't realize how close it has become. Stay till the end, because that conversation may answer questions that have remained unanswered for far longer than anyone expected. Now here's the part almost no one talks about. The greatest turning points rarely begin with dramatic announcements. They begin with quiet realizations. Your soulmate recently experienced one of those moments. It lasted only a few seconds, but its impact continues growing every single day. They suddenly recognized that every attempt to forget you somehow reminded them of why you mattered in the first place. That realization wasn't planned. It simply appeared, clear and undeniable. At the same time, the person from the past sensed something had changed, even without hearing those thoughts directly. That's why the feeling of urgency has quietly started replacing certainty. They don't fear losing an argument. They fear losing the version of the story they've believed for so long. Because once someone begins seeing with clarity, it's almost impossible to return to confusion. Your soulmate isn't rushing toward conclusions. They're carefully reconnecting forgotten pieces, allowing understanding to replace assumptions. Every memory they recover strengthens something they thought had disappeared forever. But the biggest revelation hasn't surfaced yet. There is one hidden truth connected to your soulmate's past that has remained completely unnoticed until now. When that truth finally comes into the light, it won't simply explain recent emotional changes, it will reveal why certain delays, unexpected separations, and unanswered questions had to happen exactly the way they did. The person who silently hopes you never hear this message already senses that moment approaching. Because once the final piece of the puzzle falls into place, the entire picture changes, and nothing that follows will ever feel the same again. There is one moment the past wishes it could erase forever. It wasn't a loud argument. It wasn't a dramatic goodbye. It was a single realization inside your soulmate's heart that changed everything without anyone noticing. From that day forward, every attempt to pull them backward started losing its power. The person from their past felt it immediately, even though nothing had been said out loud. That's why, if they could speak to you today, they would probably beg you not to hear this message. Not because the message creates change, but because it reveals the change that has already begun. The truth is impossible to hide forever. And once the heart recognizes it, nothing can make it invisible again. Your soulmate has started comparing how they felt in different chapters of their life. Without forcing anything, they began asking themselves a quiet question: when did I feel most understood? That question echoed again and again. Every honest answer pointed toward memories they had pushed aside for far too long. Suddenly, little moments became unforgettable. Conversations they once considered ordinary now felt priceless. They realized that genuine care often speaks softly, while confusion usually arrives with the loudest voice. That discovery created an emotional shift no one expected. The past started losing its grip because clarity had finally entered the room. But here's the twist that almost nobody sees coming. While your soulmate was rediscovering forgotten truths, the person from the past became increasingly restless. They couldn't explain why familiar strategies no longer worked. The same words no longer influenced your soulmate. The same emotional patterns no longer produced the same reactions. It's almost as if an invisible door quietly closed forever. Before you hear what happened next, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone who believes timing reveals every hidden truth, and leave a comment about which part of this message touched your heart the most. Sometimes one message reaches exactly the person who was meant to hear it today. Something huge is waiting for you, because what happened after this realization completely changed the direction of the story. Days passed, but instead of fading away, these feelings became stronger. Your soulmate stopped looking at the past through pain and started looking at it through understanding. That single change transformed everything. Have you ever noticed how the same memory feels completely different once your heart begins healing? That's exactly what happened. The moments they once overlooked suddenly carried incredible meaning. They remembered your patience when life became difficult. They remembered your honesty when comfort would have been easier. They remembered how safe they felt during conversations they once took for granted. Those memories weren't returning to create regret. They were returning to reveal value that had been hidden beneath confusion. Meanwhile, the person from the past quietly noticed something unusual. Your name no longer created frustration inside your soulmate. Instead, it created silence, the kind of silence that only appears when someone is deeply reflecting. That silence became more frightening than any argument ever could. Because silence often means the heart is making decisions the mind hasn't spoken yet. The more they tried to distract your soulmate, the more your soulmate became curious about the emotions they had ignored. They started realizing that some connections don't disappear simply because time passes. They remain patiently waiting until understanding finally catches up with experience. This realization wasn't dramatic. It was peaceful. And peaceful certainty is much stronger than emotional pressure. That is why everything has begun shifting beneath the surface. Even if nothing appears different on the outside, inside your soulmate's heart an entirely new chapter has already started. Now the most unexpected revelation of this chapter arrives. One evening, without planning it, your soulmate came across something that reminded them of you. It could have been a familiar place, a meaningful song, or a simple memory connected to an ordinary day. But instead of quickly moving on like before, they stopped. For several long moments, they simply allowed themselves to remember. And during that quiet reflection, one undeniable thought entered their heart: maybe I never truly lost the connection, maybe I only lost sight of its meaning. That realization changed everything. The person from the past may never hear those exact words, but they are already feeling the consequences. They sense distance growing where control once existed. They sense peace replacing confusion. They sense that your soulmate is no longer searching for answers in old voices but within their own heart. And once someone reaches that place, the future begins unfolding in ways no one can predict. Yet there is still one final truth your soulmate hasn't fully uncovered. Hidden beneath every recent coincidence, every unexpected memory, and every emotional shift is a secret that explains why this connection has refused to disappear despite every obstacle placed in its path. That revelation is closer than anyone realizes. When it finally comes into the light, it won't just surprise your soulmate, it will completely transform the way they understand your role in their life.